These are all examples of business processes. And ultimately, by and large, for the most part, what companies are trying to do is they're trying to automate business processes. So if you break it down at that level, it's a high level of abstraction.
Welcome to UpTech Report. UpTech Report is sponsored by Terraleap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. I'm very excited today to have my guest, Jan Arendtsz, who's based in San Carlos, California, CEO and founder at Celigo. Welcome, Jan. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, your product, it's an integration platform as a service or iPaaS solution. So for those out there, if you're an IT or department leader in a mid-market or enterprise business, looking to connect all the different SaaS applications that you're using together and automate your business more, this might be an intriguing platform you want to check out. Now, on your site, Jan, you state, quickly build and manage simple or complex integrations at scale. Help me understand, what was the problem that you initially saw when you set out to found Celigo, and how has that changed over time?
Right. So the initial problem was created by the explosion of the SaaS business, as you can imagine, right? Lots and lots of new SaaS applications coming on the market. So if you go back to 2010, we just wrapped up a consulting company that I'd started, where we were doing some of this work back in the day from, let's say, the mid-2000s through about 2010. There were, I don't want to say a handful of SaaS applications, but there were a limited number, let's say. And those companies that had really invested in SaaS were really trying to then connect some of these apps together and running into various different problems. So that was the genesis of it. And by the way, also trying to connect these SaaS applications with other more legacy applications, on-prem apps, databases, various file systems, trading partners, what have you.
That's almost become like, it's become inbred of it's everywhere, and it's become integral to businesses, and to make them speak to each other and legacy systems sounds like it is a problem that's only growing.
Right, and what's interesting is if you take 2010, the nature of the problem was a little bit different from 2020 or 2021, where now a whole bunch more has moved into the SaaS world. There are thousands of SaaS applications on the market.
And originally more the legacy? Was it the legacy issue of trying to integrate these new SaaS things with legacy systems?
It was more prevalent. We really took a mindset, and it's important to understand there were lots of other companies solving a lot of the legacy problems. So right from the start, we were more focused on how can we build a platform that is optimized to connect more of the cloud-based apps. Now, right. We also connected, let's say, with an on-prem database or legacy application as well, but we didn't lead with that, right? So we always knew that at some point the equation was going to change, and it was going to be either predominantly or 100% all SaaS. So that's the direction that we took.
Now, originally, I imagine with on-prem and having to build those, that's much more of a service mindset in business, creating custom solutions for that. But you're moved into more of an overall platform that has a lot of built-in connections, correct? That people just already use?
Yeah, and let me just explain that at a high level so that the audience has some context, right? So on last count, there are supposedly like 20,000 public APIs out there in the world and growing. And then, as I said, there are thousands of SaaS applications, and then there are all these legacy applications. There are trading partners, banks, so on and so forth. So what we try to do when we approach this through integration is at two levels. So the first thing we do is we have universal connectivity. So any application that has an API, especially if it's a REST-based API, we have what's known as a universal connector, REST connector, that can go connect with it. So if there are 10,000 apps there that support a REST API, we can connect with all 10,000, so on and so forth. Or if a given company is trading with someone else using flat files, CSV files, delimited files, fixed width files, we can do all of that, right? So we have a number of these universal connectors, including for databases. And then on top of that, we have what we call named connectors. So think of all the major SaaS applications out there. we can connect to those not using that generic or universal connector, but through the name connector, because we can really dumb the complexity down and make it much easier, especially for a not so technical user to be able to use it. And that's where we get into this name connect.
Gotcha. So for the REST API, that's if you're leading in an IT department, you'll know how to use that and use your integrations for that. But if you're just a department leader, not an IT professional, you don't know too much, you can use those popular integrations without having to know too much of the technical side.
That is correct. And I'll add one more thing. Even for those IT users, you may not know all the apps out there, right? So even you will need help to take a complex API and make sense of it and make it more consumable. And that's what we aim to do.
I want to ask though, like this is only growing because the need of the amount of SaaS applications out there is only growing. There are solutions like Zapier and there's another one, I can't remember the name of it. And we talked about ahead of time of how is your, and I wanted you to share here, how is your angle different then? Like, why can't they just use Zapier or
Yeah, so Zapier is, I think, an interesting case, a very successful company, but sits a little bit to the side and in general is not considered part of the space we're in, the iPaaS space. And here's the reason why. So in a nutshell, Zapier focuses more on task automation at an individual level. So let's say you as a user has a particular task that you want to automate. Let's say you did a survey. You use SurveyMonkey and you want to pull that data into Salesforce. That is something that is unique to you, right? It's not like an integration that's running at a company level where a certain event.
Get access to that.
Exactly. At least that's the way Zapier started, and that's what they're known for. Whereas what we do is integration that runs at the company level. It's an enterprise level integration. So let's just use a typical CRM example. A given company is using Salesforce. An account record is updated, and there might be further downstream effects that's going to hit a number of other systems. And that happens not for one rep, but for anyone who touches or makes an update to the account. So I think that's a fundamental difference.
Got it. And traditionally, before your type of solution came along, an IT department or an external software development company probably have to build custom code to connect two different applications together, where this iPaaS solution is meant to be just a universal hub that takes less time to then automate all these different pieces together as a business as a whole. Did I get that right?
That is correct. So especially going back to when we got started, right, in 2010, we'd hear this custom code, custom solution, homegrown solution, a Fabit. Less so today because there's got to be a really good reason why you would even consider that path. And especially given that a lot of the SaaS vendors have built their own integration so that they can sell their product, right? So the vendor-built integrations arguably is right up there when a given company is thinking about connecting their enterprise or automating certain business processes. The custom coding is still there, getting the consultants to come in, but that's on the wane at this point.
Right. So what, before using your application, would they be using? What do you think an IT department is just manually building using the REST API to do their own things? And if so, what's the value then of using Celigo?
Yeah, it's all over the map. Clearly, it's just based on the company, the space they're in. Do they have, how mature the IT department is, the number of business applications they have, so on and so forth. So the default option is you do nothing, and that's manual data entry, right? And in certain cases, they can get by. The same data needs to be entered in a different system. The accounting team might go do it once a month, create a general ledger or what have you, right? And that can function okay. I think by and large, the biggest alternative or before someone considers an iPaaS, what's embedded is those vendor-built integrations that I talked about. So think about, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a quick step back to say, if you look at all the SaaS apps out there, there is a there's a kind of a natural order or hierarchy. And I want to introduce the concept of what we call a foundational SaaS application. So think of a SaaS application such as a CRM or an ERP or an HCM. Why are these different? It's because they are the system of record for well-known business objects in the enterprise, such as the employee or the account or the sales order or the vendor or the purchase order. And all these other more specialized SaaS applications that are sprouting left and right and going deeper into one particular function ultimately have to connect to a system of record. If you're time and expenses, you need to connect to the employee record or to the GL, right? So as a result, when you buy these off-the-shelf SaaS applications, especially the specialized ones, they likely have some pre-built integration there that whether the user knows it or not is in play. And I'm happy to expand on this later on, but those two can work really well in certain cases, but have a shelf life. And clearly, if you have 100 SaaS applications and 80 vendor-built integrations running, everyone doesn't know about the existence of the other one, and it's just mass chaos. And that's when the iPaaS conversation becomes more and more prevalent.
Got it. Helping actually give concrete examples of it in play really does help to see it in use. I'm already looking at your site here of this one quote from Dave at ZoomInfo, Director of Financial Systems, where you said you did an order to cash process, automating from Salesforce to the cash process system. They reduced not needing effectively 5 full-time employees. In fact, where you really see the power of here is where people are manually entering or managing transactions and being able to automate it using a system like this. Is that a good use case? And do you have any other use cases?
That's a great use case, right? Because the whole quote to cash business process, the automation of that is kind of like arguably the backbone, one of the key business processes in the whole enterprise, right? It's connecting arguably the front office, the sales teams, the marketing teams with the back office. And to be able to do that in an automated fashion in real time, where you don't have to go through manual entry is just absolute key, especially also to get insights on both sides as well.
I love this other quote here is that now we're truly running a business instead of a business running us. That's why I love technology. I feel like really that should take on the heavy lifting of manual entry and things doing that are repetitive, and people can focus on the problem solving. What can you speak to those folks that are in the IT department or leading a department overall in a business section? What can you speak to as far as advice when it comes to automating a business, even apart from Celigo? Just what would you share as far as advice?
Yeah, so let's take a step back real quick. And there are various different terms that we use, the industry uses, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page. So let's say that integration ultimately is a means towards an end, and that end is to automate certain business processes. Integration is more than that, but just to take a key example. So if you have that quote to cash business process that we talked about, or another typical one that most users will understand is what we call hire to retire, right? You're gonna hire employees. So you might have an applicant tracking system, and once you hire that person, the data needs to move into your HR system, and then you need to onboard that person, and that data needs to be populated in multiple different systems. These are all examples of business processes. And ultimately, by and large, for the most part, what companies are trying to do is they're trying to automate business processes. So if you break it down at that level, it's a high level of abstraction. And you as a company are saying, what are my key business processes? And are they splintered across multiple SaaS applications? And is that splintering going to get even more prolific as time goes by? And then you're going to think about how does that business process need to function? How does the data need to flow? What are what's the system of record? So on and so forth, right? You're going to start thinking about those types of things. And when you think about that, that's the harder thing to do. Then you're going to say, okay, well, I've come up with a list of business processes that I absolutely need to automate. We cannot continue business as is. And then you're going to try and connect these various applications. Ultimately, the end is to be able to automate that business process. So let me just stop there to see if that makes sense, and then I'm happy to dive into how companies should really start thinking about that prioritization and the roadmap.
I mean, it does make sense to be able to take that step back of understanding what are your core competencies of focus that you're doing over and over in your business, and if you're over multiple SaaS applications, how can you connect it to make your life more simple? I do actually want to take a little different shift here in the conversation about, let's say someone is ready. Right, ready to look at this. Your business model, how does it work? Is it based on like the number of seats using, the number of applications that are being utilized? How does that work?
Yeah, it's not based on the number of seats. It's ultimately based on what we call the number of endpoints, which is a rough proxy for the number of applications that they have. So the more applications that you have that need to be connected, then you will have to go ahead and get a higher level or a different edition.
For those out there that are looking at you guys and what you do, is there a certain size of company that is best suited to use it? Like are they too small, a certain size? Are they too big? What's the best type of user?
Yeah, so great question, right? So my quick answer is the vision that we have is to be size agnostic. And if you as a company have invested in SaaS and you've reached a certain critical mass of SaaS applications, especially some of these foundational SaaS applications. And typically I say if you have 2 or more foundational SaaS applications, the CRMs, the ERPs, the HCMs of the world, then you will very likely need an iPaaS. That said, our focus right now is really on the mid-market, where we see the most adoption. As you can imagine, sometimes larger companies are a little bit slower to truly embrace a new model, and especially given that we're fully optimized for the cloud. Again, we can connect with any on-prem app. We have a whole system to be able to do that. The focus is more on that mid-market.
Got it. Okay. And now, looking forward from here, what would you say is like the most exciting feature or release that is either out there right now or is coming up that you can share?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple, and happy to dive into one if needed. So one is a feature that we recently introduced. Let's say it's part one of a longer term strategy. And the premise, it's really about managing your integration. So, and taking a quick step back, when we talk about integration, there's the building part. You have to go build these use cases, and then you put it into production, and you want it to run. And the model that all our customers love is, right, you set it up, and then can I forget about it? Which you never should, but that's the mentality that they want. So how can we make that journey as easy as possible? To that end, we've come up with a capability named Autopilot, as the name suggests. Using AI and machine learning, we can understand what's happening, what some of the errors are in these particular use cases, make sense, compile them all together, and get to a point where we can proactively suggest to the end user, the administrator, as to how to fix it, remember how they do it, and then try and auto fix it in the future, so that that whole production running integration, the management of it is as seamless as possible, something that we're really, really excited about, and wow, a first in the iPaaS space. And then real quick, out there now? Yeah, so it's mostly out there. We are we focused on more of the compilation of these errors and making sense of it, and then being able to auto correct. The autopilot part is coming out very soon.
Okay.
I know you asked for one. Do you mind if I give you a second one real quick?
Go ahead, give it to me. What's another one?
Okay, so one key thing that we see is customers want certain integrations to be pre-built, and we've had a reputation. Our brand is associated with pre-built integrations. We make it as easy as possible. But the pre-built integrations, we call them integration apps. So, for example, say connecting Salesforce and NetSuite, we've built this. We've put all the possible use cases, we've productized it, put the dials and knobs in front of the box to be able to configure it, and that works great. But now, in this new world, there's more splintering. There might be a CPQ in the mix. There might be a contract lifecycle management product in the mix. There might be an e-signature or a billing application. And so you go from 2 core apps to 4 or 5 apps. And then, as you can imagine, right, there are lots of permutations and combinations. So something that I'm super excited about is this concept of business process applications, where instead of just saying we want to connect app A and B together, we're going to give you the freedom to be able to pick some of those apps, and then the framework that we have will try and put it all together and walk the user through a process so that they don't have to build it. And more importantly, we give them some of the best practices built into that framework. So as you can imagine, that's something that...
Yeah, you're automating the automating process.
Correct, right? And also giving them a framework, but not to try and tightly couple it to the way we think it should work. We want these companies to be able to decide how the data flows, how that business process should work, but to try and do it in a way where they have to do the least amount of work.
Mm-hmm. I'm really intrigued with this future concept of where both AI assistants as well as other tools are there to help us even simplify and streamline our own automation processes, and they can understand both the technical side, but also can comprehend what we're trying to get them to do. So I'm intrigued that you guys are already implementing that type of solution. What would you say is a good first step that folks can take with Celigo?
In terms of
the demo, is that like the best thing to jump on a call? Do they start for free to download it?
Yeah, so we're big fans of our product and we stand by it. So as a result, we have both a trial and a freemium model available. So you can go implement one business process or one use case for free in perpetuity. And so we have confidence in the product, the usability especially. We've spent a lot of time on this for both technical users and not so technical users, that they can come in, sign up, and if you know what you want to do, start building it out. And so, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. And that's a great way to get started, but then call us soon thereafter.
Mm-hmm. Got it. You believe in your product enough that as soon as people start using it, they're going to be hooked. And that's a good confidence in your own product, that you don't need to sell them on it on a sales call first. They can just use it for the more technical folks and be able to get in there.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, John, for sharing the insights and where you guys are headed, and how you're helping people automate the automations as well in their business. For those that want to learn more, definitely go to their website, celigo.com, and you'll be able to try out your first integration for free. Also, stick around for part 2 of our discussion with Jan on the insights and the lessons learned over the last 10 years of building Celigo. So stick around for part 2. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.